In its first couple of weeks, the coalition government scrapped fair pay agreements and extended the 90-day trial to all employers. To talk about what else is on the employment law agenda, I'm joined by Workplace Relations and Safety Minister Brooke van Velden. Well, let's just talk quickly about that what you have done. I mean, you did those very quickly. Obviously got some criticism from, I guess, unions and others that you were, I guess, undermining the rights of low-income workers. And I guess that criticism has been reiterated this year when you announced the increase in the minimum wage. Well, what's your response to that?
Well, my response to that is absolutely not. You know, my whole approach here has been we need to give business certainty. We need to give back business confidence. Because if we are a government that supports businesses, we ultimately support workers. You know, we want a flexible labour market that works for all employers actually feeling like they have the confidence to give someone new an opportunity, or to be able to say, yep, we know what the employment laws are. They're set in stone now. There's no funny business. We actually know how we can get on and employ with confidence. And I think that's what we have aimed to do. That's why it's been in our first 100 days to repeal the fair pay agreements and to reinstate those 90-day trials. Because I've been hearing from businesses up and down the community that the fair pay agreements was really going to hurt them. You know, you take, for example, a small butcher, like I have even in Tamaki. There are some small companies that just can't compete with larger players who set the rules of the game. They can't possibly compete with a countdown butcher, for example. And if you've got all of these people coming to the table, setting the rules, setting the wages for an entire industry, that could see some of our small businesses knocked out. And that's not what this government wanted to achieve.
Do you think, though, that there are some, for instance, taking supermarkets, and I think it came out of the COVID-19 pandemic when supermarkets stayed open and those workers remained at their jobs, I suppose, despite the rest of us kind of staying safe at home. But how did they negotiate, I guess, better working conditions and wages? I mean, everyone seems to appreciate that the job they did was pretty important, particularly at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think of COVID, this was a very different government. But even at that time, we had rules that were set by the government that favoured some large players. You know, some supermarkets were able to stay open, but the small shops on your corner of your street weren't deemed essential, and some of those had to close. You know, take the butchers, for example, in those instances. So this is a government that says, yep, we want rules of the game that work for the big players and the small players. We want a flexible labour market that ultimately provides employment opportunities for people up and down the country. That's why we wanted to make sure that we had those flexible labour market settings and we got them right. And that's why I've also gone ahead with setting the new minimum wage, making sure that we are, yes, having an increase so that we're supporting the wages of our lowest paid Kiwis, but also acknowledging that over the last few years, the balance has been wrong. You know, the minimum wage has been set at a rate that's gone up nearly 50% in 7 years, when we've had cost of living pressure or CPI only go up around 25%. So it's double. And when I'm hearing from businesses who say, look, we've had a new public holiday with Matariki, you know, we've got 10 days sick leave now. It just all the time feels like there's more and more pressure and we have less money to actually pay our staff well because we've got so much regulatory compliance with the government. So what I was hoping to achieve with setting the minimum wage at 2% was saying, yep, let's get that balance right. We do want to support our lowest paid workers, but not put up the minimum wage so high that you end up with employers saying, we just cannot afford these extra costs. They flow on back into the economy and we have to put up, you know, the price of our goods that we're selling. You know, if you're a small cafe owner, for example, you're having to put up the price of everything that you're selling, and that has another inflationary impact. So it was getting that balance right.
I mean, talking about regulatory compliance, I mean, obviously David Seymour is going to be looking at this, particularly in his ministerial role, but one of the parts of the coalition agreement between ACT and National is to simplify health and safety laws and regulations. So what are you looking at there?
Well, I'm really excited about this whole term. We've got a few things that we need to get done in our coalition agreement. I've ticked off 2 with the FPAs and the 90-day trials. But yes, we'll have a lot of work going ahead with health and safety reform. And that's because we've been hearing from a lot of businesses and a lot of employees who find that the rules and the red tape of just trying to do basic services in the economy are really hard. Companies having to hire people specifically to make sure that they're actually following all the rules and getting it all right. And yes, we want workers to be safe in their work environment. I think that's really important, that people come home from the end of the day and they're safe and they're back to their families. But we're not putting on so much cost that it actually outweighs the benefit of health and safety law. So it's looking into that. I can't announce exactly what we're doing yet because I'm still setting my priorities, but that is going to be a very exciting work program.
I see Peter Dunn has written this week about the use of road cones and traffic management and how over the top that is.
It is.
Is that an area that you might look at?
I know that's front and centre for a lot of people because it's something that everybody can see, right? You don't need to be involved in a specific industry to see the effect of overcompliance, where anyone who just wants to make one little change to a road somehow has to shut down the whole thing and you've got hundreds of cones. We're seeing that across every industry. You might not be involved in health and safety work in specific niche areas, but it is there. And so it's our job and the new job of the government to look into regulatory burden and overcompliance, and also make sure that we're getting that balance right between also ensuring that people come home safe.
Yeah. Because in fact, under all of those rules and regulations, I think our health and safety record still isn't that great, is it?
Well, we do have some work to do on things like WorkSafe and compliance. That is an area of focus of mine as well, is making sure that, where we have the regulator, that the regulator is actually working effectively and efficiently to ensure that businesses are being compliant with the law. It's not their job to go in and audit every company, but it's the jobs of every employer to make sure that their workers are safe. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that the rules are there, they're easy to follow, and people know what they are.
Are you confident in WorkSafe as an agency?
There is a lot of struggle with WorkSafe. We've seen that over the last few years. I'm really confident that we have a new CEO who's actually going to turn things around. He's already hit the ground running, and I know that we're looking for some new board appointments as well at the moment, and I expect that there'll be a lot of restructure to come to make sure that the regulator is operating effectively.
So do you expect a sort of a change in focus from the organisation?
I would highly expect so.
What sort of change? What do you want it doing?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be working with WorkSafe over these coming months to set new strategic performance measurements, and also to make sure that we have a larger government focus on making sure that the regulator is actually working and using its efforts to get the maximum impact. So we know that WorkSafe did go off the rails, but it is coming back on track.
Look, another one you're looking at is simplifying personal grievance procedures. So again, has work on that started? I mean, do you have any idea of what you'd like to do?
Yeah, those conversations are still to be had. So in these next few months, I'll be working on my priorities and making sure that we've got a work program for our workplace relations and safety for the next 3 years. My ultimate focus has been making sure that we stick to the 100-day commitments, getting rid of the fair pay agreements, extending the 90-day trials. Separate to that again was the minimum wage and the conversations with Cabinet. And now it is my work program to look to the future and what we can achieve.
So what can employers expect then from you as Minister? You're going to make things simpler for them and cut costs, is that the idea?
Well, the idea is that we want to be a government that does support business to support workers. We need a flexible labour market. We need fair rules that work for everybody, that are clear, they're understandable, they're simple, so that businesses can get on with their role in the economy. It's not the role of the government to be micromanagers of the economy. It's to set the clear rules, get out of the way and allow businesses to thrive. And that's what my focus is on, making sure that we have employment law that works, that's simple, that we have health and safety laws that are more simple, and that everybody has a thriving economy.
Brooke van Velden, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For more content just like this and all the latest business and political news, head over to mbr.co.nz.